A fifth night in downtown Portland. After the peaceful protesters left, people began throwing items at police barricades around the Justice Center as the violence took over. Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler today said he watched it unfold last night.
I saw where the pockets of violence were occurring and how our police bureau was responding. It confirmed what I already knew about the minute-to-minute reports I've been getting over the last 5 nights, that our officers are doing everything they can within their power to respect and protect peaceful demonstrators. But they have another job, and that job is to make sure that lives are safe and public safety is protected. That's why we cannot tolerate violence.
Portland police used gas and flashbangs and other tactics to break up the hundreds who refused to leave late into the night. This morning, Police Chief Jamie Resch thanked the peaceful demonstrators who earlier in the night turned out en masse.
I still hear your message, and I know those who are engaging in criminal acts do not represent you. Many others aggressively engaged in acts of violence directed at police overnight. Fireworks, bottles, ball bearings, and other projectiles were thrown at officers throughout the evening. After several hours of dispersal orders, some arrests were made, and the situation calmed down when the rest of the crowd dispersed.
Along the way, police used new tactics, like marking cars they thought were bringing supplies to the violent protesters so they could be safely stopped later. I had a chance to share some of the Sky 8 video with Scott Weingar, a retired Portland police captain who also served in the Oregon National Guard. He remembers policing downtown through at least 30 protests over the years, and while he's probably not exactly unbiased, he does understand tactics. He said last night officers walking in lines showed they were following commands from supervisors and were in control. The police had not lost control of the police force. As for the video showing a police cruiser driving through a barricade put up by protesters,
if that was for some purpose, in other words, to keep that area open and accessible and limit the protesters' ability to control an area, then that seems like a reasonable thing to do as long as nobody was endangered. However, if somebody was endangered or if that wasn't necessary to control an area, then I would question whether or not that was a sound decision.
The police chief said the incident is under investigation. She also called on the larger community to stand up to the violence.
How long can we, as a city, endure the extreme disregard for human life and property demonstrated by a small group of violent individuals? We have to collectively come together to prevent and stop those who are holding our city with violence.
Also today, Gresham Police confirmed that one of their sergeants Sunday night during the protest was hit with a burning projectile that landed on his vest. It did start to burn the vest a little bit, but others were able to put it out apparently, and he was not injured. In Northeast Portland, Pat Dooris, KGW News.